Hi. Thank you for wearing masks if you have them, and if you don't, I hope George Michael will forgive you later. Okay, welcome to Judith Sullivan's Stories and to meeting Dr. Reverend Jimmy Goodlove. There will be a 7-minute intermission in between the two, which gives you plenty of time to waltz down to the 3rd floor for a beverage, which you're welcome to bring back in the room. You'll be on your honor. You'll be on your honor not to spill it. So, no, everything's done. This is compact. You guys probably have table reservations at 7:45, so we'll get in there. It's my pleasure to introduce Judith Sullivan, and she will share stories with you now.
Everybody asks me, well, tell me about your stories, and I'm like, what stories? Your stories about what I've discovered here and there. So maybe you guys, after I tell you the stories, you can tell me what I should say to people, okay? That's gonna be your test. So John is my first husband's adopted son. He had a really difficult time of it from before he was born, when his birth father pushed his mother down the stairs when she was pregnant. He had a very serious learning difficulty, so he actually dropped out of school in the 7th grade. He knew every kind of drug that there was, lived down the streets at times, lived with his friends, couch surfed, was in jail. So he had a rough life, and this is just the first half of his rough life I'm going to be talking about. But John is a person that if the boat were sinking and there was a life raft, he would be one of the 10 people I would have on my life raft, because he knows how to get along with everyone. He knows how to find resources everywhere, and we just always had a nice connection. I was probably the only one in his family that he never scammed for money. I loaned him money. He actually paid me back, which surprised me, but we have a very good relationship. The other thing that still surprises me to this day, is how easily he could get a job. Now, this is a guy with no high school education. He could waltz into something and get a job. Unbelievable. So when he was living with us for a short time in Arlington, Virginia, and he loved motorcycles. His parents had paid for him to take this 3-month intensive motorcycle repair course, which he did beautifully with all the practical tests, but didn't take the final because he couldn't read well. So he never got his certificate. But when he was in Arlington, he looked for jobs, and he got offered several, but he got this job at the best motorcycle shop in Arlington. Everybody knew it. Even if you didn't ride motorcycles like me, we all knew about this shop. And he had to pass a drug test and a lie detector test to get this job, to get any of these jobs. And it was like, there was a part of me that was like, just anxious thinking about that, because I thought, well, I'd be so anxious if I had to take a lie detector test, even if I never did drugs, that I would be convicted on the spot. I don't know how lie detector tests work, but that's how I sure that they checked your anxiety. And so I never knew how anybody passed a lie detector test. So he passed a lie detector test. And he bought himself a nice red motorcycle. I went to the shop, and he was not just got a job like as a clerk, he was the head of the accessories department. Now this was in probably 1979, around there. So drugs were big back then. So while he was there, he got a deal on a red motorcycle. He was so happy because he had transportation and it was cool, and he loved motorcycles. And he would come home and say, Judith, the brakes aren't working right. And I took it in to have him fix the brakes. So I would take him to work that day. And that happened about 3 or 4 more times where they had to fix the brakes. So the brakes were always something that just weren't quite right with this bike. So one day he came down and he goes, Judith, the brakes are acting up again. He said, it just bothers me. And I said, well, take it in and get it fixed. And he goes, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I keep taking it in and something's just not right. I said, well, brakes are what keep you safe. So take it in. He goes, okay, I'll take it in tomorrow. That night, we got a call from the hospital, Fairfax Hospital, and said, we're sorry, but your son was in a horrible bike accident. His brakes didn't work, and he crashed into one of those stop signs that have a 4x4 pole. And he mangled himself badly. And actually, years later, I put together that his injuries were very similar to Princess Diana's injuries. But they medevaced him to Fairfax Hospital. He was in surgery for 9 hours. He lost a kidney and lost a spleen and had to have some other organs repaired and broke several bones. And the next morning I was sitting with him in intensive care, his bed in intensive care, and he was still in that after surgery of 9 hours of anesthesia and drug medicine. And I was just sitting there and I happened to be looking at the monitor that they have above the beds, and his blood pressure was all over the place. His breathing was all over the place. His heart rate was all over the place. It just didn't look good. I was sitting there, just hanging out with it, just watching that television set with all of those lines going across in zigzags. When 2 men in suits came in, and I thought, I bet they're policemen. They walked right over to him and said, John, wake up, John, wake up now. And I said, excuse me, but this is inappropriate. He's still recovering from surgery. They ignored me and kept saying, wake up, John. I don't like being ignored. I got up and I stood in their faces and I said, I want you out of the room now. This is inappropriate. And he said to me, you get out of the room or we'll arrest you. So I was right with my thought that they were probably police. So I went out of the room and watched with a hawk eye to make sure that they didn't touch him or do anything. And they kept yelling at him, John, wake up, where are you doing drugs? John, wake up. And John was going, what, man? What? No. So as I was watching, again, I was watching the monitor. Watched the monitor. I was amazed at what I saw. The blood pressure was doing this. The breathing was doing this. The heart rate was doing this. Looked exactly perfect. Exactly how it was supposed to look. And that, I think, is how he passed lie detector tests. I went, that's the secret. So his body, on some deep intuitive level, knew what to do when there were police around. That's the story of John, the first half of the story of John. I'd like to read you a prose poem that I recently wrote. This is called Tables and Husbands. Depending on how you look at them, tables and husbands, they're not that different. I see potential and also see what I want to see, sometimes missing a few important aspects and maybe glossing over a detail or two. I had an okay table in my kitchen nook, but it was a rectangle and awkward to eat or work around. And I think now I'm just going to substitute the word husband every time the word table comes up in here. I got it at a used husband's store when I moved because I needed something right away to eat at. I wanted a round husband that would be more friendly. I moved the rectangle husband to the office. He was well suited there, and found an almost perfect round husband at an online auction. That husband was just okay, It was only $28, so I got him. 2 weeks later, I happened to be looking at another online auction and found the really perfect husband. I got this husband for $38, a real deal. He was 3 inches larger in diameter and a beautiful dark walnut color with drop sides. It was more versatile. I moved the previous husband into the basement and sold him. When the new husband arrived, he was perfect. But when I saw him upright in my kitchen, I noticed that his legs were 6 inches longer than the other husband's. Sitting in the chair, I felt like Alice in Wonderland, and I had just taken the shrinking pill. How could I have made such a big mistake? I saw what I had wanted to see. A 39-inch in diameter husband with drop sides, exactly what I wanted. I glossed over the other numbers and didn't notice that this husband was 36 inches tall instead of the normal 30 inches. What was I to do? Get a 6-inch pad to sit on or make his legs shorter? I couldn't make his legs shorter. So I got the carpenter who lives next door to do it. Now he is perfect. Maybe I've learned my lesson. Carefully look at all the details. But who says you can't teach an old table new tricks? And I'm nominating myself for an Oscar as the best projectionist. Intuition. What really is intuition? The dictionary says it's an insight that is not, you don't come across it through your rational thought process, or it's a spiritual insight. I think it's more complicated than that. I think that sometimes it comes through mentally, sometimes emotionally, sometimes physically. And I think that because we're mammals, we have a built-in type of mammalian intuition that we're not always in touch with. I think of the animals that were in Thailand during the tsunami. They were not there when the tsunami hit. They knew. They had an internal knowing that they didn't want to be there, and they did not get a notification on their iPhones. They had it internally. So intuition is one of those odd things. One thing I do know about it is that for me, it has never come with paranoia. Intuition never comes with paranoia or fear. For instance, if I've been, when a new nanny came to take care of my daughter who only spoke Spanish, and she was at the house for the first time, and she took Jade for a walk and didn't come back for 3 hours. I was worried, and I was panicky, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Where could I go look? And then I realized that she'd never been at the house before, and she didn't know where it was. But she came around finally. I was really relieved, and I acted up. Oh, I hope you had a nice walk. I didn't say, should I draw you a map? But, so sometimes you can get into that paranoia, like something's happened, so my intuition is telling me something has happened. But for me, I don't think that's intuition. But like I said, it happens in many different ways. My Tai Chi teacher, Patrick Watson, and his girlfriend Patty were walking down the street in New York City and talking and laughing and having a good time. And then he takes her arm and they just cross the street. And they keep walking, and about 3 seconds later, the scaffolding that was on the other side of the street fell. Now so there was some sort of an intuition with that, not a mental intuition. Sometimes these things that you do, your body intuition, it doesn't even come up to a mental thought. It's just something that you do. And Patrick said that, well, because he was a Tai Chi teacher, and Tai Chi is a martial art, he said the best martial artists will not be at the fight that's starting on 6th Street. they'll be having a soda on 6th Avenue. So that's intuition. That's a little bit about intuition, but we're going to explore intuition a little bit more. The woman that came to my office must have been using her intuition when she wanted me to do orthodontia with her son. I said to her, "Do you see orthodontia under my name? I'm a cranial sacral therapist, okay? Not an orthodontist." And furthermore, she had been to see me for a problem her son had had, and after a couple of sessions, I said, "This isn't the best treatment for your son. I need to refer you elsewhere." And she goes, "Oh no, we're not there for that. We're here because he has a tooth that's out of alignment, and we want you to fix it." Okay? But I don't know. Oh, we know you can do this. Well, I just took those words and ran with them. They know I can do it, so I must be able to do it. But I didn't know how. So I did what I do. I checked his body, I balanced his body, I looked at his cranial bones, I looked at any imbalances he might have in his cranial bones, at the energy in the skull. And then I finished. I said, "Okay, I'm finished." And she said, "All right, what's our homework?" Well, I'd like you to take your son, take his fingers and push them in while he takes his thumbs and he pushes the teeth on either side of it and makes a little more space for it. "Okay, how long should we do it?" 5 minutes. "Just once a day?" "Well, you could do it twice if you wanted to." "Okay, when should we come back?" You see, when did I take my daughter back for her orthodontist appointment? "In 2 weeks." All right. So they came back in 2 weeks. And then they came back 2 weeks after that. And they came back 2 weeks after that, and I said, "You know, this tooth is looking different. It's looking good. So come back in a month." They came back in a month. And it was really looking good. They came back in another month, and the tooth was in place. So, maybe I should put orthodontist. Or not. My daughter, Jade, who was almost 6, and I were on a vacation with our friends, Robert and Alex, and their daughter, Amara, who's almost 5, in Canada, on a little lake in Canada, east of the Georgian Bay, and this is a small island. And you could swim around the island. And there was a boat dock on the east side where we'd have our coffee in the morning, and then there was a pier where there used to be a ferry that would come on the west side, and we'd have our wine on the west side. So there were all sorts of things we did during the day, but one day we just took a walk around the island, and Amara, who's almost 5, was very observant, and she'd walk around the island and she'd go, "Oh, look at the bug. There's a leaf. Look at the leaf. There's a twig. There's a little fish over there." So we walked, she did commentary all around the island. We get back to our room, and Jade says, "Mom, I see the bug, I see the rock, I see the leaf, but I don't say it." I know, Jade, there are introverts and extroverts in this world. Oh, she's an extrovert. I didn't think she'd ever heard that word before. "Jade, what makes you think she's an extrovert?" "Because she says all the extra words." And that's my favorite definition of an extrovert. Trying to figure out which story I want to do next. Um, there was a woman. No, I don't want to do that one next. Sorry. Words are important, and sometimes words just come up in our heads, and sometimes songs come up in our heads. And sometimes, if we're aware of it, those songs have meaning for us. Sometimes those songs give us a message. Sometimes those songs let us know something that we're not aware of in our own selves. I remember one day those words came up. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's going to be all right. And I was humming that, and I stopped, and I went, oh, yeah, I am worried. Another song that came up for me once was know when to hold him, know when to fold him, know when to walk away, know when to run, when I had to make a decision. So I want you to close your eyes just for a minute and see if you remember any song that may have come up for you at any time, or if a song just pops up right now. All right. Anything pop up for anybody?
Renegade. Don't worry, no problem.
Is that don't worry, be happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, that's a good one. That's popped up for me as well. But these songs pop up for us at different times if we're paying attention. I mean, a song can just, we can be singing it and then stop, but sometimes if we sing a song that pops up in our awareness and then pay attention, it's meaningful. So I was working with this client. I was sitting at her head, doing a cranial session, and this song popped up in my head. It was an old song. I think the last time I could possibly have heard this song was in 1964 when I lived at home, and this was 1993. And I was like, so I'm paying attention to my hands and head, but I'm also paying attention. I remember all the words to this song, and I somehow seem to remember the tune. But you know how sometimes you remember a song and you start to sing it and you really don't remember the words, and then you lose the tune and you can't remember the tune. So I was just sitting there being aware of that. And then I hear this little whisper in my head going, sing the song. I won't sing. Sing the song. No, that's not what I do. I work with the cranium, and I pay close attention to the cranium. Judith, sing the song. Oh, shit. All right. Really don't want to do this. Excuse me, Rachel. Is it okay if I sing the song to you? Hoping she'd say no, but she said, well, okay. If I loved you, words wouldn't come in an easy way. Round in circles I'd go. If I loved you, time and again I would try and say all I'd want you to know. Longing to tell you, but afraid and shy, I'd let my golden chances pass me by. Soon you'd leave me, off you would go in the mist of day. Never, never to know how I loved you, if I loved you. Did that song mean anything to you? No, I can't say that it did. Oh, I just remembered, That was my ex-husband's favorite song, but it doesn't mean anything to me. Okay. All right. The next week she comes in, looking like a storm cloud. She, with her fists like this, she walks in. I say, Rachel, are you okay? Judith, that song you sang brought up all of this old stuff about my ex-husband that I thought I had already processed, and I have had to spend this whole week processing stuff about my ex-husband. I smiled internally and said, thank you. This was a song that wasn't mine. This is a song that came up in me that wasn't my song. That's come up a couple more times. I haven't had to sing it though. Sarah came to see me. She was in some sort of an accident. She and her husband were visiting from Australia. And I evaluated her body like I usually do, and I knew she had an injury. I don't remember if she told me, but I was pulled right away to her liver. Now, liver is large. A liver is under your ribs. It's not below your ribs, it's under your ribs. It's attached to your diaphragm, and it's all the way on the right side, and it goes all the way over to under your left nipple. I have to get a little anatomy in every storytelling I do. And I put my hands there, and I sat, and I waited. Nothing happened. I moved him over a little bit to the gallbladder, and I was just pulled in like a magnet, and thinking, wow, this is important. And I was doing that, and all of a sudden, I was someplace else. I must have been in a castle because I was in a beautifully appointed room. I was having tea with the Queen Mum. I remember in the room that there were couches with cabbage rose designs on them. They were overstuffed couches. I remember there was a beautiful sterling silver tea service. And there were dainty little teacups and saucers and little plates with little cucumber sandwiches on them. The Queen Mum was sitting there with the hat on, and she might have had gloves on too. But what was interesting is she was furious. She was saying, would you believe? And it's just not right. It's just wrong. It's unbelievable. This just should not happen. And then I was back with my hands on the gallbladder going, what just happened? Was I asleep? How long was I gone? Am I over time with this client? And I wasn't. And then I thought, what was that emotion that she had, the Queen had? Oh, righteous indignation. I certainly know righteous indignation very well. I recognize it. So I said, Sarah, have you ever experienced righteous indignation? She sits up immediately on the table and goes, righteous indignation almost killed me. I was riding with my husband. We were on 250, and we were going to turn down to the Ivy Nursery, and a car cut him off, and I gave that car every obscene gesture in any language I could think of. And I lost control of my bike, and I fell off the bike and rolled across 250, and I could have died. And righteous indignation comes up quite often for me. Well, there's another little addendum to that story, is that several years later I was teaching a class in London. Teaching a class on how to work with the organs. And so I told this story about the gallbladder and its relationship to righteous indignation. Alan comes up to me after the class and says, Judith, you don't live in London, so you don't know this. But the Queen Mum was noted for her righteous indignation. She was also noted for her tea parties. She was furious that King Edward married Mrs. Simpson and that she had to be a queen. She never wanted to be the queen. She wanted to be a socialite. She loved being social. She threw lots of tea parties. So that was an interesting little piece of information. But righteous indignation. I was in Culpeper last weekend, and I went into this lovely store where I like to shop. I hadn't been there in years. I spent about an hour there. I bought some clothes, and then I had to head home, and I wanted to use their restroom. I'm sorry, you cannot use this restroom. There's a restroom down the block at the visitor center. I said, but I've been here an hour, and I've bought clothes. There's a restroom down the block at the visitor center. So I turned on my heat and I walked out for indignation. And then it wasn't a block away, it was 2 blocks away and down on the right. Huh. I walked back into the store afterwards and I said, excuse me, but the restroom is not a block away. It is 2 blocks away and down on the right. And she says, well, I said it was at the end of the road. I said, you said it was a block away. And I'd like you to tell the customers it's 2 blocks away and down on the right. Then I turned on my heel and walked out righteously. Now the follow-up for that is, my body felt horrible for 2 hours. It just felt awful. And I knew what it was. I knew it was that righteous indignation. That emotion is toxic for me. It's poisonous. I don't know what it is for you, but beware the righteous indignation. It could kill you. Anna had a lot of righteous indignation, probably for a good reason. She and her husband played bridge with my first husband and me for a couple of years, 2 nights a week. She lived in the neighborhood. She had lost her left arm to cancer in the late, about 49 or early 50s. And when you lost your left arm then, or at least in her case, they took off her left arm, her left shoulder blade, and the left half of her clavicle. So she had no shoulder. And so they tried to fix it. They cut off a piece from the middle of her right fibula. That's the little bone on the outside of your right calf. And they tried to make something with that, which didn't work. And then they just took some fat from somewhere and tried to make something that looked like a shoulder. And she would come and play bridge, and she'd have her little card holder, and she'd put the cards in, and we just stopped noticing that she only had 1 arm. Except every time she came in, she would complain about coffee and how people left coffee on their stove and it just smelled up the whole house when they left it on too long. And furthermore, why do they insist on putting perfume in toilet paper? Who needs perfume in toilet paper? Who needs perfume in laundry detergent? Who needs perfume in all the things that they put perfume in? So this was every time. She would come in and she'd go through this little litany about the coffee and the perfume. So one point I asked her if she'd like a massage, because in the late 70s I was doing massage, and so she went, oh, okay. So she came in, had a massage, and I asked her about her arm, and I said, well, does your left arm ever hurt? She says, it hurts all the time. I said, well, where is it, and tell me about it. So she showed me with her right arm. She says, it's right next to my side, and the hand looks like a claw. It's so tight, it's so painful. Okay. Also about Anna is that she had 4 kids, and her husband was posted in Germany after the war. So for a while, she had 4 kids by herself with 1 arm. And she had to, and that was before support groups. It was before you could find a bra that closed in the front. So she had to make her own bras. And in her house, it looked like you were in an inventor's heaven, because she had figured out how to get things from different places, how to get in and get them. So I could understand why she was angry. She was just angry all the time. So one of those times when I was working with her, at the end of the session, she was just lying there and looking calm and peaceful. And I remember that Dr. Worsley is an acupuncturist who brought 5-element acupuncture to the West, had said, if you lose a limb or an organ, you've only lost the physical one. You haven't lost the mental, the energetic one that has the meridians. You haven't lost just only the physical one. The emotional one's still there. So I knew where the meridians were in the body and what direction they ran. So she was just lying there. So I thought, okay, I'm going to massage her meridians of her left arm. So I started at her shoulder on the outside, brought that arm down, brought the left arm up on the inside of her arm, and all of a sudden, all the little muscle pieces at the end of her clavicle started doing this, jumping up and down, spasming like crazy. I was surprised. And she was surprised, her eyes open and goes, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. This is exactly what I'm doing. I said, well, trying to figure out how to tell her what I was doing. And I just said, well, I'm massaging your left arm. She said, well, I don't like it. I said, okay, I'll stop. And I stopped. So every time she would come in, I would finish up her nice peaceful massage with working with her left arm. I don't know why it never dawned on me to start with that, but it didn't, but that's what I did. And her little muscles would pop up and down, and she'd open her eyes and go, you know I don't like this. I go, I know, Anna, I know you don't like this. So one day I had heard about unwinding, and I had learned a little bit about it, so I knew where her arm was, so I thought, I wonder if I can feel it energetically. So I picked it up, and then I sort of followed what I thought I was feeling of this arm moving. And it took me to a place by her shoulder with her energetic arm up like this. And I held it there. I thought, it didn't go any further. And I wondered if that was maybe a place where the position it was cut off in. I don't know. I didn't ask her that. She probably wouldn't know either. So the next time she came, I just gave her a nice massage. I didn't do anything weird. Oh, she was following me the whole time I was moving the arm around. And I didn't ask her. These days I probably would ask her, what are you noticing? But I just did it. And I put it back where it belonged. So the next time, a few times later, she came and I did this again. Her eyes pop open, she goes, Judith, you know I don't like that. And I said, Anna, I know you don't like that. She said, well, but I think it's doing good. Well, that's nice. Well, how? She goes, well, my arm is relaxed by my side and my palm is open. And she also was not complaining about smells. So another experience with amputation was with the mother of Cindy Jane Child. And you know Cindy, who is well known here in Charlottesville. She's a friend and a colleague of mine. Her mother had had her right leg removed, amputated because she was diabetic. And she had, all of a sudden, was having heart attack, so she was in the hospital. And then the doctors discovered that she had gangrene in her left foot. And the doctor said, well, we want to remove your left leg. And Jane, who was the mother of Cindy Jane Child, said, no, we're not having any more limbs removed. And the doctor said, well, you need to do that, plus you keep having these heart attacks. She says, no, that's not what I want. So Cindy talked to her mom and said, do you want to go home with me? But you'll be going home to die. And I'm going to take you off your diabetes medication and your heart medication. And Jane said, yeah, that's good. So the doctors thought she had about 24 hours to live. So they went home. And the next day I called Cindy to see how her mother was. And she goes, would you like to talk to her? And I said, sure. So Jane's on the phone and she goes, Judith, I'm so embarrassed. Everybody's walking around softly and whispering, what if I don't die? She didn't die for another 18 months. the leg with the gangrene healed. And I would go over and treat her, and she probably had some other practitioners going over and treating her too. And I told the family not to sit on the bed with her on her right leg, but to honor that space where the other legs were, the other parts of her right leg were. She was off of all of her medications. She loved that time with Cindy. She got to be with her grandson. And within that time, Cindy was elected the most valuable woman in Virginia. And there was a big to-do at the Omni, a big dinner there were 100 people there, and she was honored and given a plaque and a trophy or whatever, and I never saw anyone more proud or more happy than Cindy's mother. That's all, folks.
Thank you, Judith. And your 7 minutes begins now. Enjoy the refreshments, and there's also restrooms out there. 7 minutes is a lot longer than you might think. And I hope they're down there waiting for you in case you want a beverage. And then we'll be ready to start. Thank you.